Welcome everybody to the TRACK-TBI question training webinar. As we are on the verge of enrolling subjects over the next several weeks, we aim for folks to become at ease with using Question. Some of you have used it already, but will notice many enhancements aimed at improving the quality of our data collection and study management features. I want to introduce Vibeke and Mike of Question. They have been with TRACK-TBI since day one, along with John Yue and Jeff Manley, and they have been providing really excellent support all these years. This is really going to be a high-level overview, and we plan to conduct additional webinars for course-specific training. There will be opportunities for one-on-one sessions for more customized training with both Vibeke and John for all the site coordinators. I want to go over an outline of what we're going to go through in today's training. First of all, the TRACK-TBI CRF is a web-based electronic data capture system. It supports the work of all of the TRACK-TBI cores, the clinical, the informatics, the outcomes, and the imaging, biospecimens, and biostatistics. It enables the coordinators to enter subject data from hard copy data collection forms into HIPAA-secure and TBI CDE compliant ECRFs that are eventually going to be uploaded to the FITBR system. And it also enables real-time access to study management tools. In terms of getting started, the website where you log into is up here, and you'll have more time to get that information in more detail later from Vibeke. She's going to show you how to set up your profiles once you have your passwords and initial login. She's going to review toolbar navigation tips and how to contact support. We've set up a special system in the FreshDesk application where you can create a ticket, and we'll be giving you more training on how to use that. But essentially you can either email this address directly, or even from within the Question application, there's a drop-down that will allow you to send your message for assistance. We're going to be reviewing the main menu features, which shows how to enter new subjects. We're going to show you how to identify the forms that need to be completed by study group and cohort and by their due dates. We're going to show you how to navigate some of the custom features of the data entry fields, because these are very important for our field and form error checking features that we've put in place. We're hoping that we do a lot of the data cleaning on the front end, so we don't have to come back a lot later on and clean up the data sets. Another important feature that we've added is the form completion status, as well as the feature to have updates of where you're at in terms of the milestones for each of the patients that you're enrolling. We're also going to show you how to print the hard copies of the ECRFs. We're going to show you how to upload your site-specific IRB and regulatory documents. We're also going to show you how to use the patient management forms for scheduling of all these follow-up studies. Also, a new feature that I'm looking forward to playing around with a bit more is the extract menu, where you can generate subject lists according to any parameters that you are interested in. Lastly, there's a documentation menu where we will be uploading. It hasn't happened yet because the final documents are being prepared now, but there'll be a place where you can access all of these and other special forms. We're going to have future training specific to all of the cores. This will include biospecimen collection forms, how to use the screening logs, all of the outcome forms, and how you enter all your data into those. We're also going to have an administrative dashboard for enrollment plan milestones, and we'll have sessions as needed for resolving data coding issues that arise among the collectors. So many of you have heard me say over the last few months that it feels like we're driving the train while we're laying the tracks. No pun intended. But nonetheless, I've been very impressed by all of the hard work on the details to get our infrastructure in place that everybody's been doing. Some of the features of the database are in beta testing over these first few months, and we really have to have real data entered in order to work out some of the glitches that we may have. So we appreciate your patience and feedback during this time as we're testing a lot of the new features. So thank you everybody for your time today. I'm going to sign off and turn the session over to Vibeke.
Let's get started.
All right. So I'm going to show you some of the features in the TRACK-TBI database today. I'm going to log in as a UCSF test user. So the first thing you see is a list of all the subjects, and as you'll see, I am filtered, so you only see UCSF patients. When you log in, you're going to be filtered for your site, and you won't be able to see any information from the other sites. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to add a new subject here. And we have our subject page, and I am going to add Snuffy Smith. You don't have to put in the date of birth if you don't want to, but you should put in the age of the patient. A lot of the forms are dependent on which age category the patient falls into. You also don't have to put in the site because this will automatically be updated depending on what site you're signed in as. You can do a consent source. You can do the date for the date and time of the written consent. As you see, the date and time fields are smart, so if you put in now, it'll actually say the date and time of now. All right, so I'm going to save this, and I'm going to set it to complete. And I get a couple of error messages here. So I have to put in the gender, and I also have to put in who signed or who presented the consent. There's a little tab up here called My Profile, and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to show you a couple of things in here. This is where you can set your menu orientation. So right now we are at a top menu orientation up here. Some of you who are previous users will see that this looks different than what you're used to. You might have a left menu orientation. We kind of prefer this type of menu because it takes up less real estate. So this is where you can actually go in and reset that if you're a previous user. There's also something called tab style, and we have classic tabs right now. I'm going to change it to drop down tabs just so I can show you. There's also a date time format, and this is the format that the date and time is presented in your forms, and you can set that. So right now I have the US format 24-hour clock. You can also put the international format if you want to. It only controls how the date and time is presented to you. You can enter it in any format you want, and then it'll be presented the way that you've set this for. So I'm going to update this profile here. I'm going to go back, and actually let's go to Snuffy Smith here. Now you see a different tab line. These are more pop-up tabs. It saves the real estate, but it also sometimes makes it a little harder to see what your options are. So I'm actually going to go back here to my profile, and I'm going to, for this presentation, I'm going to change it to classic tabs. Update the profile, and then I'm going to go back here. I also want to show you this pop-out, which can be very useful. It'll show you the recent items that you had here. So I had an extract and a form print, and then I had a bunch of subjects. I can drag things up here to the favorites. So if I do a lot of form printing, I can put that up here. If there are things up here I don't want anymore, I can put them in the trash can. Oops, hold on, let's go back here. I'll put a couple more things here in the trash can. So that was the profile, and that was the subject tab. So let's go to let's look at the tab line a little bit. So right now I have set this patient to an ED discharge. Now what happens if I put it as a hospital admit, and then I save the form? Then I'm gonna so this up button will get me up to the overview of all the patients. Then let me click on this patient again, And I changed it to hospital admit, and now you see that there's actually a hospital tab up here. So this will enable you to fill out all the forms that are associated with the hospital stay. But if it's an ED patient, obviously they don't need that hospital tab. So let me show you a little bit about the initial presentation. All the patients in TRACK-TBI will have information in these forms. The first form is the presentation form. It's a very important form. Probably the most important field here is the date and time of injury. So we are going to put today's date. Let's do it in the US format. If I don't put a time, it'll just automatically revert to 0. There's a little hint here. If a time is unknown, you should estimate it. But for all intents and purposes, I'm going to put 0 right here. This date and time of injury is important for a couple of reasons, for a database purpose. For every date and time in the database, there's a time since injury, so it'll be offset depending on the time of injury. So if we go down, here's the date and time of arrival at the study hospital, and I'll put today's date, and I will put 8 o'clock. Oops, let's put 8 o'clock. And save it. You see that the time since injury has now been calculated to 8 hours later than that. There's a couple of different types of data fields in this form. We have radio buttons here where you can choose one. If you go down here and choose other, you can fill out other. And then when you decide that maybe you weren't running, you were actually just walking in, this will clear, and then you can save this. Over here, we have more radio buttons here, and there are also guidelines over here. If you're not sure what the hypotension is, it'll give you a little guideline. So anytime there's one of these speech bubbles, there will be some kind of guidance in terms of what to fill out in the field. If you decided that you actually don't know yet whether there is hypotension and you don't want to put unknown, this little curved arrow will reset any radio button that it's associated with. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill out these fields here. Then we get down to the Glasgow Coma Score, and this is pre-hospital Glasgow Coma Score. If you have a best and a worst, you can fill that in. If you only have one, just fill out the best. If you don't know the Glasgow Coma Score, you can click on pre-hospital, GCS unknown, and as you'll see, that part of the form disappears. If you decide that it actually is known, it'll reappear and you can fill it out. But for now, we're actually going to say it's unknown. All right, so I think I filled out all of this form, and I'm going to save it. First, I'm going to set it to complete, and then I'm going to save it. And then I'll see that actually I was not quite complete here. You see that the form completion status has now been set to not complete, and we have an error message that I need to fill out presentation to hospital. So I go down here. I'll decide that it is primary directly to study hospital. I already have the time date and time of arrival, so I think it's going to be complete now. I'm going to save it. And the error goes away, and then the form completion status turns to complete again. Let me show you the ED form here, which is also one of the very important forms in this database. In this version of TRACK-TBI, we've added a lot of limits to our different fields, so that if I put a systolic blood pressure of 500 here and save the form, I'm going to get an error message saying that it needs to be between 32 and 265. I can decide that, well, maybe it really was 500, so I'm going to check that I'm going to ignore this, and then I'm going to write a little note. Oops, let's see if I can spell hi. I'm going to save this, And then as you can see, my note is saved, and then my username is saved, and then the review date time is saved as well. So most of our required rules run by the time that you set your status to complete. If you're just filling out the form, we don't want to run all those rules because it's going to inundate you with a lot of rules, and you're not going to know how to clear them all. So the only rules generally that run when you hit save are going to be the limits. And so the ranges it will let you know if you are outside of a range. So let's say I have diastolic blood pressure of 2. That's really not going to fly, and so you have to put it between 16 and 163 unless you'll try to ignore it. But I'm going to put it at, let's see, 80. So let's look at, let me show you. So there's a notes area as well if there are any pertinent notes that you want to fill out, but don't put any PHI in there. There's a GCS section. You can fill out the eyes and the verbal and the motor, and then when you hit save, it's going to automatically calculate it. There's also the option if it's untestable. You can put untestable, and then when you calculate this, it'll add eyes and motor, so that's 4, and then it'll put a T at the end of it. There's a section for pupils, and so if it's untestable, then this will gray out. If we decide it's not untestable, then we can fill these in, and you won't be able to fill out the untestable and the unknown. We've added, for some of these longer forms, we've added save buttons out in the side so that when you hit the save button, it's going to return you to that section that you saved in. It'll still save every field in the form, but it just it'll have like a placeholder. So if you hit this save button here, it'll return you to this section. Let's see. Okay, so then we have a lab section where you have to either fill out the not done or fill out the result. Some of them we calculate the result, and then we calculate it in the SI units for our more international crowd. Then we have some drug screen fields over here: blood alcohol, pregnancy test. We have IV fluids and APG and complicating events, and then at the end there's the discharge of the ED and the destination where people go after the ED. So that is the ED form. Let me show you a little bit about our show list. So this is usually the place that you're going to go to first when you're going to fill out information. And there's a couple of features here that might be useful. First of all, there's a filter up here. Since you're a filtered user, all of these site filters are not going to matter to you. You won't be able to see the data for all the other sites. But let's say you just want to see your ED-only patients. You refresh that, and then you can see there's only ED patients. Let's go to the search feature here. All the fields that were up in that header that you saw before are now here. So let's say I want to see males that are ED discharge. I'm going to search on that. And then you'll see all the male ED discharges. There's also, when you search down here, there's a show more, where you can actually search on, you'll see both the fields that are up in the header, and then you will see all the fields that are in the subject table. So yeah, there may be other fields that you would like to search on that aren't necessarily up in that header. Let's see here. I'm going to show you now a couple other features up here. We also have a site info, and of course, since I'm a UCSF user, I only see UCSF. We have some information about the IRB approval date, expiration date, and then also when your enrollment started. There's a tab for personnel. so that I filled in Mary and John right now. And actually John is not a research assistant, he's a research coordinator, so let me change that. And I also think that he's probably NIH and Toolbox and Flexible Battery certified. So I'm going to put that there. So this is the place where you enter the information about all your personnel. There are more fields that will be coming to this, such as whether they are going to receive emails, other different areas of information about the personnel. We have a screening log, and that is also under construction, and that should be finalized within the next week or so. And then this is an area where you can add documentation. So this would be like your IRB documentation or any other kind of site-specific documentation that you might have. One other area here is the extracts, where you can go, and this is how you get your data out of the system. Again, it's filtered so that you can only see your information. So I'm going to add an extract here. It's going to be called test 4. I'm going to start at the highest level, and the highest level in our database is our subject table up here. So I'm going to start with that primary table, and then I'm going to extract something from the injury history table, and that's where a lot of the data from the initial presentation is. So I'm going to continue here, and here you see all the variables from both the subject and the injury history table. And as we scroll down, you see that especially the injury history table is very long. Let me go up again here. I won't extract everything. I'll just do a couple of things. First name, last name, date and time of injury, and let's do a couple of pre-hospital GCSs. All right, I'll go down to the bottom of here. I'll hit continue. And you see all the fields that you're going to extract, and this is the order that it's in right now. I actually want my subject fields first, so I'm going to give them a lower sequence than the injury history. And then there's an area here for extract criteria. You may want only to extract males, maybe only people over 50 years old. There are all sorts of criteria that you can attach to this extract, and there's an area here where there are hints in terms of how this should be formatted so that you can get an extract out of it. I'm not going to attach any criteria to this right now. I'm just going to hit save. And here you get to specify what kind of output you want. You can either just view it on the view the data on the screen, or you can view it on the screen and then create a download file. It could be either CSV or it can be XML. Or you can, without looking at the screen, you can just create a download file. And then here you can decide if you want field headings, if you want to decode the variables. I'm going to return both the codes and the value here. You can also choose a date format. All right, so I hit enter, and I get all the data for the subjects that I've specified in this extract. Let me go back just for a second and show you here. Let me do create a download file. And here you see then you have a click here, and then once you click here you can download it, and then you can import it into any kind of analytical tool or Excel or whatever you wish. Let me show you one more thing. We have a form print, and this is a list of all the forms in the database. You may want to print them out when you're filling them out and then enter the data at a later time into the database. So when you click on the printable form, you see all the fields in the form, and you can choose them and fill them out here. Another useful thing that will help you in your extract is there's this column called form with variable names. And so when you click on this, you're going to see the same form except you're going to see the variable names here. And this can be very useful in terms of figuring out exactly what the table that the field is from and what the name of the column is, so that when you do your extract, you actually extract the things that you want to look at. Let's go back and look at one more thing here called document management. This is where we may upload some SOPs, any kind of documentation from the that will guide you from the leadership. I want to show you one more very cool feature. Let's go back here. There's a CFR timeline. So when you click on this, you're going to see the forms that are required for your patient. So right now we have the baseline forms here, and then we have the 2-week follow-ups. The 2-week follow-ups are not going to be clickable. They have this kind of a beige color, and that means that they're not started and they're not available. The green color means that it's complete. We just completed both the subject and the presentation form. When you hover over the social adult, you see it's not started, but it is available. So let's click on that for a second. You see here the form status says it's not started. If I save that, it's going to say in process. So let's close it, and then let's see what that looks like up here. So now you have a little curvy arrow that means that it's in process and it's available. So let's click on it again, and then let's put in, let's see here. Actually, I don't want this one here. Let's go back to my presentation form, and let's put in an error. So I'm going to unclick my hypertension, and I'm going to save it. And now it's not complete, and there's an error up here. So let me click that here, and then let's see what it looks like now. So now it's orange. It still has the curvy because it's still in process, and there's an exclamation point because there's an error. So let's see, what else good do we have in here? Oh, we have the patient management. It's also a very important form here. So we have all the follow-up appointments for the patient. There's going to be a best appointment date, and then you're going to look at that and try to get your outcomes and your MRIs as close to that date as possible. And this field will you can fill in what the date actually is that you scheduled your appointment, whether or not the patient showed up, and what the outcome was. We have a couple more fields coming up for this form, so it'll change a little bit. Then we have a contact log. When you contact the patient, you can put in the date and a time. You can put in the reason for contacting the patient, and then you can put the result of the point of contact. We have some fields whether or not the biospecimens were collected, and then we have an area for notes. So I think that is about it for now in terms of my overview. Are there any questions?
Can you show the support tab?
Actually,
It's not
it's not in for this user. For most of you, there'll be a tab up here that's called support. And you can go there, or we can go to TRACK-TBI Fresh Desk. And this is a place where you can go and you can create a ticket if there are things that you think are issues or you have questions about anything. And this will also be a place where we will upload training videos, and there'll be forums. And
that's it.
I think that's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Vipka.